Hi guys, my name's Tina Albert and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tina.
And I'm really grateful to be here and to be sober this morning. And if there's anybody new or relatively new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I want to welcome you here. But this is Sunday morning and most of the newcomers I'm sure have split by now. So just the way it goes. Is anybody in their first year sober? Can you raise your hands for me? I'm so glad you guys are here. Welcome. I love Alcoholics Anonymous, you guys, and if I say nothing else that you hear tonight, I want you to know that I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to thank the committee for asking me to come, and Susie, thank you so much for inviting me. I've had an awesome weekend. It was really cool to be back in Florida, and I was stationed in Pensacola, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. We'll get there in a little bit. But I've had a really great weekend, and you guys have made me feel welcome, and Darlene's taken excellent care of me, and I'm blessed, you guys. I am so blessed. If I live to be 100 and do nothing but serve Alcoholics Anonymous every single day for the rest of my life, I could never, ever repay you for the life that you guys have given me, and I'm so thankful for that. I love this deal, and I've enjoyed all the speakers this weekend, and I like to think of conventions like you got Friday, which is the warm 'em up speakers, right? It's like warming up before the pitch, and Martha and Mike did a great job of warming you guys up on Friday, and then Saturday's like the wind up and the pitch, and our Saturday speakers did an excellent job of pitching, and you guys have set the bar so high, I'm going to have no problem crawling right under it this morning, I'm certain. And then Sunday morning, my job, I suppose, is to be the Sunday morning wrap-up, the send you home with the love of Jesus spiritual speaker. And you guys always put me on Saturday morning, and when you call up, I laugh and think, certainly you meant like Tammy from Southern California, not Tina, because I'm not that Sunday morning spiritual speaker. So when you guys put me here, I always just shake my head and show up, because that's what you guys have taught me how to do since the 10th day of October in 1984, is just to show up and do whatever you guys ask me to do, and it's held me in really good stead for a long time in Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Sunday morning. I love the people that stick around and come to the meetings on Sunday morning, because you guys are my kind of alcoholics. You are there until well past closing time. You don't split at last call. You're here at 2:05 waiting for one more, and you've drained every single drop out of the cup. And that's the way that I drank, and that's why I love Sunday morning, because I think the diehards stick around for Sunday, because you want it all, and I absolutely do too. And that has never changed for me, and I'm thankful for that too. So I get to share with you guys in a general way thank God for that general way thing, what I used to be like and what happened and what I'm like today. Or more actually probably what I'd like to think I'm like today, or if I really want to be honest, what I want you to think I'm like today is probably what I'm going to share. But I was the kind of kid who needed a drink long before I ever took one. I probably popped out of my mom's chute, restless, irritable, and discontented. I felt different from the time that I could remember. I was raised in Southern California. I'm actually from West Virginia, Wheeling. I'm from good alcoholic stock. Everybody in my family is alcoholic, and like a lot of us, I suppose, it kind of skips over generations. So my mom was kind of the normal one, but my grandparents and then every single one of my cousins, we all drank like pigs. And so I'm from West Virginia, and when I was a little girl, my mom picked me up and ran as far away from there as she could, and we ended up all the way on the other coast before she ran out of land to keep running. And so I'm from Southern California in this little beach community called Manhattan Beach. It's a little upper middle class beach community, and she moved there. I was loved like more than life itself, like literally. When my mom was about 5 months pregnant, she got really sick, and she was in the hospital for half of her pregnancy almost, with doctors telling her that they needed to take the baby, that she would never carry it to term, and if she tried to have the baby, she was going to lose her life, that she would die in the pregnancy. And she stayed in that hospital, and she kept me anyway. and I was born, and I was like the apple of her eye, like the light of her life. I've been loved beyond reason for as long as I could remember, and my mom bought this little house in Southern California in this beach community, and I remember going to school as a little girl, and all the girls in my class were about 5 foot tall, and they all had long, flowing blonde hair, and they had these bitchin' little surfer chick tans and these sparkling blue eyes, and they just looked like little prepubescent Pamela Andersons. They were absolutely perfect, and I would look at these little girls and think, oh my God, they are just so beautiful and so perfect. And I would look in the mirror when I was in the 7th grade, and I was 5'8", and I had long, stringy, reddish hair, buck teeth, and freckles. And I would look at these little girls and see Pamela Anderson, and then I would look in the mirror, and I felt like Pippi Longstocking on crack. I was just odd, you guys. I felt different and separate and alone and not good enough and not smart enough and not pretty enough from the time that I could remember, and I just knew that there was something wrong with me. And my greatest fear was that you guys were going to be able to figure it out before I did, and then you would have something on me, which is never a good thing if you're a person of my kind of thought process. Like I'm the alcoholic of the neurotic fringe. There's something wrong with me from the time that I could remember. I used to sit around the dinner table with my brothers and sisters and know that my mom loved them way more than she loved me. And I'm an only child, so there's a little bit something wrong with the way that I think about stuff. And I love the way that Clancy talks about this disease of perception, because my perception from the time that I could remember, you guys, has been incorrect. It's just wrong. And I have this t-shirt. I still do, but I ride Harleys. I love motorcycles, and FTW used to stand for one thing in 1984 before I got sober, but today I have this tank top that I got at the International Convention in San Antonio. It says FTW, which used to mean F the world. And on this t-shirt, it was some drunk junk. It says FTW, first thought wrong. And that's my mantra, because the first thing that pops into my head is always incorrect. That's why it's so imperative, you guys, that I have a sponsor that I'm current with, that's active in my life and knows what's going on, because I run stuff past him on a regular basis. And I think there's always somebody in our life that's supposed to keep us laughing. And for Clancy, I suppose that's me. I'm just nuts most of the time. But I went to school in the 7th grade with all of these little girls, and I felt different, and I felt separate, and I felt just inferior. And I remember going to gym class in the 7th grade, where we used to have to start changing into our PE uniforms, and we would do PE, and then we had to shower afterwards. And all the little girls in the gym class would have these little lacy training bras and these little matching undies, and my training bra fit better when I put it on backwards. Like the biggest thing in my body was my shoulder blade, and I was sickly skinny, and I had this stringy red hair, and I was just wrong. I felt so wrong. And when I was in the 7th grade, my best friend's name was Carrie, because she was this Italian girl, and she had long black hair, and her teeth were bigger than mine were, so she boosted my self-esteem. Like, we seek lower companions long before we drink, but Carrie was my friend, and her mom was an alcoholic, and I had nobody in my life really that I could look at and see the effects that they got from a drink of alcohol. But Carrie did, and she told me one day in the 7th grade that we were going to cut school, and we were going to go to her house, and we were going to drink scotch. And so we did that, and I remember cracking the paper seal on that scotch bottle, and I took a big drink off scotch. It was the first drink that I consciously took to change the way that I felt. And I remember that stuff burnt all the way down, and it burnt all the way back up, and it burnt when it flew out my nose. It was like vile, nasty, horrible liquid. I hated the taste of that scotch, and my drinking career could have been written that day. We drank straight out of the bottle. We had no glass, no icer, no mixer, no anything. We just drank the scotch. I threw it up all over the place, and I remember thinking, I am not drinking any more of this. This is absolutely horrible. And I watched Carrie take a couple more drinks off that scotch bottle, and her face got pink, and she started giggling, and she wasn't worried about cutting school and getting in trouble. And for the first time ever, I recognized that I wanted what somebody else had, and I took the scotch bottle from her, and I started drinking that scotch. And when I finally got a couple of drinks to stay down, something absolutely magical happened for me, you guys. And I swear to God, the way that I remember it is that my hair straightened and my teeth shrunk and my boobs grew and everything that I thought was broken about me no longer mattered for just a couple of minutes. And I remember being able, it felt like my shoulders dropped about 3 inches and that insane crick in my neck went away. And I was able to take a nice, long, deep breath. It was like the first breath of fresh air I had ever taken in my life. And I had no idea that I had been walking around for 12 years holding my breath. But I took that drink of scotch, and it was just like, oh, my God, you guys. I swear to God, this is like AA sacrilegious stuff right here. But if I could drink with impunity today, you guys would have another speaker. Like, I absolutely loved the effect that I got from that drink of alcohol. And so to fast forward through the rest of that afternoon, I got incredibly sick. I threw up all over Carrie's living room. About noon, the school had called my mom because we were ditching, and she was banging on the door. I don't know how she knew where I was. She was like a pre-Al-Anonic. And so you guys like that, and boom, right to Carrie's house she went, and I took the rest of that scotch bottle and I jumped out the bedroom window and I was off on Pippi's first grand adventure. And you guys had so much fun that afternoon. It was amazing. We climbed the water tower in Manhattan Beach. We were climbing over backyard fences and hiding in dog houses, and I was running from the cops and they weren't even chasing me. Oh my God, it was just so much fun. And about 3 o'clock that afternoon, I knew I couldn't go home because I was in a lot of trouble. So I took Carrie's 9-year-old brother. I stole a bicycle from the continuation school that had no seat on it, and I ran away from home because it just seemed like the answer. I don't know about you guys, but I heard a speaker a long time ago say this. He said, you can't think up the solution to the problem with the same brain that created it in the first place. And I create problems in my head, and then I try and think my way out of them. I think that think, think, think slogan that we have hanging on walls in Alano Club should be banned from Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was new in AA, I told my first sponsor, it says think, think, think. And he said, with what? And he was a vile old man. I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a little bit. I seem to be attracted to vile old men as sponsors. Sorry, Clancy. But James, don't send him that tape. I was just wrong, you guys. So I took Sean and we ran away from home. And I forgot to mention during this time in my life I was doing the Pippi Goes Lowrider phase. Because I felt so incredibly different on the inside, you guys, that I would do anything on the outside to make me feel different, or make me look different. So those feelings on the inside reconciled with the way that I looked and the way that I acted on the outside. And it seemed to like make some sense to me. And so I was doing this Pippi Goes Lowrider phase, and I had this reddish hair like pitched in this Aquanet pitchfork thing, helmet on my head, and I had black eyeliner, and I wore dicky pants and collared shirts, and I ran around with these little black carpet slippers, and I was scribbling La Flaca, R13, all over the walls in Redondo Beach in pencil, praying to God all those lowriders didn't figure out who La Flaca was. And so I stole a butcher knife from Carrie's kitchen, and I wrapped a chain around my neck, and I was dressed the way that I just described to you. I put Sean on the handlebars of this bicycle, and I ran away from home. And about 11 o'clock that night, I had pedaled us all the way up to East LA. You guys should be familiar with that. It's in like the Cheech and Chong movies. And I had this crying little 9-year-old. I was 12 years old. I was out of scotch, and I had not another good idea left. And I ditched the bike in a dumpster, and I called the police for the first and only time in my life on myself. And they came and picked us up, and my mom was devastated. My theme song in Alcoholics Anonymous for 1,000 years was, it's my life, I'll do whatever I want, and I love to drink, and I really never hurt anybody but myself. Like, I hurt myself, not anybody else. And from the time that I took that first drink, if I want to be honest and look at the effects that my drinking have on the people around me, like I take a drink and I just splatter. all over everybody in a 50-yard radius. And my mom was devastated that night. She came and picked me up, and she was crying in the car. Her friend Carol was driving, and Carol was cussing at me and smacking me in the back seat, and my mom was slinging snot all over the windshield. And I woke up the next morning, and I was so sorry. Clancy talked about that last night, like I was so sorry. And when I'm that sorry, really what it means is I'm going to do it again, and I know it. That's why I'm so incredibly sorry. I was just over remorseful all the time because I knew I was going to apologize, and then I was just going to do it again. Because I loved, like I said, the effect that I got from that drink of alcohol, and I had no idea. Like as a 12-year-old, you hear a lot of people in Alcoholics Anonymous go, I started drinking young and it was hard to get alcohol, so drugs are a big part of my story. And while that's true, I'm not going to bore you with the mundane details of that. Like, I am an absolute alcoholic, and I like one of our other speakers spoke about this weekend, was able to quit all of that stuff anytime that I wanted to, but I was never, ever, ever able to put down a drink of alcohol. And no matter how great the necessity or the wish, I was never able to put down that drink of alcohol. And I drank myself into and out of that middle school, into and out of Maricosta High School, into and out of Pacific Shores Continuation School. When I was a sophomore, I had no credits. Well, I had 2.5 credits because I passed my driver's ed class. It's the only one I showed up to. And my counselor called me in with my mother, and he suggested I take the California High School Proficiency exam so that I could graduate early, because there was no way I was going to get my diploma. And so I took that test, and I passed, and I went to El Camino College when I was 16 years old. And there's a line in the 12 and 12 that says, we think that we can float above the rest of you on our brain powers alone. And I thought that was applicable to me when I got sober. I didn't read it at the time, but I went to El Camino College. I did the same thing there that I did at Maricosta and Pacific Shores Continuation School. I got drunk before school. I showed up to campus. I left before I got in trouble. I went to no classes. They were all incompletes, and I was just wasted teenager. And I got this amazing job. It was right down my career path. It was very technical. I was the drive-through technician at the local Burger King, and I coined the phrase, want fries with that? I thought I would upsell. And I was hanging out the drive-through window one day. My friends used to come by and order Big Macs because there aren't any at Burger King, and that was my cue to give them free food, and then they would give me free stuff. So I gave them free food, and I was hanging out the drive-through window drinking with my buddies in the drive-through line, and I turned around, and there was a United States Marine standing at the cash register in his dress blue uniform. And ladies, I don't know about you guys, but I love me a man in uniform. Started with like Cub Scouts, and then I like football players, and like it just kept going. So there was this Marine, and there was nothing like a Marine Corps dress blue uniform, and so I gave him my phone number. And he started calling me every morning at odd hours, like 11 a.m., and I hadn't got up yet, or I had just crawled in the house, and I finally went down to his office one day just to get him to leave me alone, and I found out that he was a Marine Corps recruiter. And if you don't know this, you guys, their sole intent in life is to recruit you into the United States Marine Corps. Like, who knew? And I went down there, and I was giving him this sad tale of woe about how come I was a 17-year-old at Burger King with a California high school proficiency exam and quitting college. And I told him that I had to go to work and supplement my poor mother's income so that she didn't lose her house. She still hates me for that. You guys really just, she needs to go to Al-Anon so bad. She just doesn't release anything, I gotta tell you. And so I found out really quickly that Sergeant Dale Starkey had no intention whatsoever of recruiting me into his United States Marine Corps, but he did take me next door to the Navy office. And in 1981, I got off this bus in Orlando, Florida. I was drunk from the plane ride over, and there were people grabbing my stuff and yelling in my face and lining up on these little yellow footprints and running all over the place. And I figured in the morning when I could talk to somebody in charge, I would be able to explain the nature of the mistake that had been made, and they would let me go home. And didn't happen. I was 17 years old. I was the youngest person in my company, and I got you in trouble all the time. Like, the way Navy boot camp works is one person does something dumb, 81 women pay the price, and I was the one person doing something dumb, and you were always paying the price. And 5 weeks into my boot camp experience, we have this little work week thingy, and I happened to run across a 6-pack of beer in the chow hall that somebody brought me in. I got drunk in boot camp and found myself standing in front of the commanding officer of the Naval Recruit Facility in Orlando, Florida. And were you him? And you guys, my mom had her ticket to come to Orlando. She was so proud of me. It was the first thing that I ever completed in my whole life, almost. And I thought they were going to kick me out of the Navy. And then I thought they were going to set me back into another company. But my CO took pity on me, let me graduate with my company. We did this division sidewalk thing where for like 9 hours with my rifle, I had to do rifle exercises and hold it out here and run. And I thought I was going to die, and then I was afraid I wouldn't. And it was horrible. But I graduated, and I came back, and I went off to A school in Pensacola. And they enlisted me. They gave me a contract to be in naval intelligence, which is kind of funny. I was a cryptologic technician, and I went to A school in Pensacola. And I got in a lot of trouble at Corey Field in Pensacola. I went to NASAP, which is Navy Alcohol Safety Awareness Program, where they try and teach you that drunken sailors are of no benefit to the United States Navy. And like there's this song, right? What do you do with a drunken sailor? I was trying to explain to them that that wasn't the case, and they didn't want anything to do with it. I did this week-long class. I got 5 college credits for it. And Friday, I took all the bad kids in NASAP over to the EM Club, and we had rum and cokes on our lunch break, and then I took one back for the graduation because it just seemed like a good idea. And on the big poster everybody signs, my little counselor says, "No more rum and cokes in NASAP, Tina. Fair winds and following seas." And I was just like an idiot, you guys. And I got drunk on a duty weekend when I was going to school. They were bringing me Mojo and these cans, and I left base. I got in a wreck on the bridge while I wasn't supposed to be on the bridge. I wasn't allowed to leave base for the weekend, and they took one of my stripes and half my pay for 2 months. They put me in the restricted barracks for 14 days. I got set back into another class, and the whole time I've got the Naval Investigative Service running around my neighborhood trying to give me top secret special intelligence security clearances, and I'm just a drunken fool, and they didn't know it, and really I didn't either at the time. And I graduated from that A school, and they sent me to Adak, Alaska for my first duty station. It was 1982, Cold War era. We're spying on Russia, and that's where they sent people in naval intelligence. And I worked in the chow hall for a while, and I buffed some floors for a while, and I finally found my position on Adak, and I was secretary to the commanding officer of the Naval Security Group on Adak, and every single piece of classified intelligence that came out of Zito Point came across my desk, and I would type it up and give it to the CO, and I would sneak off at lunch and go to the EM Club and have a couple Long Island iced teas, and then I would come back and I would send that information to the wrong people at the wrong commands, and I was just in constant trouble, you guys. They took my clearance. I worked in the supply department. I'm drinking all the time. They send me to Alcoholics Anonymous for the first time, and I would sit around these tables with 6 crusty old sailors that looked like they were dying, and I would listen to them talk about Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was 19 years old thinking, like, this can't possibly be. Well, at the time I was 18 years old, and I had this little counselor. His name was Mike Linehan. He was an old-timer in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he used to ask me crazy questions, like, do you ever wake up in strange places with strange people and not know how you got there? And I would tell him, Mike, I am a United States Navy sailor, baby, like, duh. Of course I do that. It's in my job description. It's contracted. And I failed to see the problem. He used to say, like, he would ask me all these questions about my drinking, and he tried to get me to look at the fact that what I heard anyway was that you have a problem with alcohol. And people had been telling me that my whole life, and I really didn't see that I had a problem with alcohol. I thought that my problem happened about 72 hours away from my last drink. And all of a sudden, my hair hurts. And all of a sudden, I hate the woman that I am. And I don't really care for you guys too much either. And I burn with this guilt and this remorse that absolutely nothing can extinguish but a drink of Jack Daniel's whiskey or a Long Island iced tea. And I, time after time, make a decision to stay sober because I love being in the Navy. I love being a sailor. I love my job. I love the sense of pride that comes from serving my country. I'm a patriot before patriots were cool. I loved everything about being enlisted, and I would swear off forever, like our big book talks about, and then 3 days later I would think maybe a beer wouldn't hurt. They put me on Antibuse, you guys, and I drank on Antibuse. I got through half a Heineken and threw up for like 6 solid hours. I was splotchy red with this rash all over myself and tried to tell them that I had the chicken pox because I'm a quick thinker, and that one didn't fly. And I swore I wasn't going to drink anymore, and a couple weeks later I started thinking my body's probably acclimated to the Antibuse by now, and certainly if I didn't have Heineken but maybe a Coors Light because it's almost water anyway, I would be able to pull it off. I can't fathom the idea of not drinking. And I walked over to the EM club, and one of the bartender there, his name was Bill, and he was one of those guys from the AA meetings. And I ordered a double shot of Jack Daniels and a Coors Light because I thought just in case I was going to throw up, I wanted to get the effect from the drink before I started puking. And I took that double shot of Jack Daniels. I had a seizure and fell off the bar stool, and I woke up in the Naval Hospital on ADAC, and they sent me over to the psych unit in Anchorage where I spent 3 weeks being observed. And they sent me back to ADAC with a recommendation that I be separated from the Navy. And I told Captain Shivik, I'd do anything. I was so committed, anything you want me to do. And he gave me another shot. He sent me to the Naval Regional Medical Center in Philadelphia for rehab. And I stopped by that psych unit in Anchorage on the way over. It was a 7-day medevac to get me to Philadelphia from ADAC. And my counselor, from the first time the psychiatrist found me, I was sitting under the table in the day room trying to hide from people, and he put me on these little blue pills called Librium, and they were just phenomenal. And by the time I got to Philadelphia, I was on a stretcher. They had taken my uniform. I realized they weren't paying attention to how many little blue pills they gave me, so anybody that walked by would say, blue pill, blue pill. And I was when I got to Philly. I spent a week in the rehab. And I didn't know this for a long time, but somebody from Alcoholics Anonymous came to that open bay ward when I was detoxing in Philadelphia and gave me a big book. And they sent me up to that rehabilitation program where there were 35 guys in a big open bay and me in a private room. And I was in hog heaven. Who knew you could drink like a pig and end up with 35 guys all by yourself? It was just great. And I ended up going to a Phillies game. I never got off phase 1 restriction when I was in that rehab because I didn't get it. These little Navy corpsmen would go, you guys, you have a problem with alcohol, and I knew they didn't understand. Like I said, people had been telling me that all my life. We went to this Phillies game. They were crushing up my Antibuse and liquefying it and making me drink it because they would catch me sticking it under my tongue. And we went to this Phillies game, and my friend Mike and I, who was 250 pounds and this huge big old boy, decided that we were going to drink one of those big beers that they have at Philly Stadium. And so I was thinking the top half, you guys, is much larger by volume because of the circumference of the cup. So if Mike drank the top half and I just took the little tiny bit at the bottom, I could probably pull it off. And we got back to our seat right before I turned that flush red color, and I spray puked 5 rows of Philly Stadium. And they sent me back to that rehab and sent me over to the naval station to wait for my separation, and I was devastated. I remember crossing the quarterdeck of the hospital to go over to the naval station, and my counselor was standing there. His name was Jim Boyer, and he was another one of those old-timers in Alcoholics Anonymous. And he asked me what I was going to do because you got to have one of those post-rehab plans. And I told him this, Jim, I'm going to go to the neighborhood Alano Club in downtown Philly. I'm going to ask this nasty, cantankerous old bat named Alice to be my sponsor. She was one of those chain-smoking old biddies that used to talk like this, like all my favorite old-timer women in AA did. And I was going to go over there. I was going to stay sober. I was going to get a sponsor and do whatever it took to save my military career. And he goes, that's good, kid. And he had that look on his face like you old-timers get when you know we're just full of crap. Like whatever we say just doesn't matter because you know what we're going to do. And he goes, kid, if you ever want to get sober, call Alcoholics Anonymous, but you won't. You'll die drunk. And I was 19 years old. I left that naval hospital to wait for my separation. And everything in me, you guys, you could have hooked me up to a polygraph and I could have told you that's what I was going to do and I would have passed. with every fiber of my being, I wanted to stay sober and do what I told Jim I was going to do. And I went over, I checked into the BEQ, and at noon I was at the EM Club, and I was pitching quarters and drinking beer one more time on Antibuse, and I was sick and I was pathetic. I was discharged from the Navy on the 15th of July in 1983, and everything that I loved in my life I had traded for just one more Long Island iced tea, just one more Jack Daniels and Coke, just one more shot of tequila. And I had no idea as I was walking through my life that I was going to be able to trade the love and respect of my mother and her own peace of mind. And I was going to trade a military career that I loved more than anything. I was going to trade my dignity and my self-respect and my self-worth for just one more drink. I didn't know that's what I was doing when I walked up to the bar and ordered a drink, but that's what ended up happening. The next 15 months of my drinking, I did every single thing I swore to God I would never do that separated me from you guys. I would go to Alcoholics Anonymous and I would hear you guys talk about DUIs and wrecking cars and losing families and kids going to CPS and losing jobs and being homeless and all of this stuff. And I would think, not me, not me, not me. I'm 19 years old. I was secretary to the commanding officer of the Naval Security Group on ADAC. That's like our northernmost link in our chain of defense. But top secret special intelligence security clearance when I was 17 years old. I can't possibly be an alcoholic. And you guys would give me these 20 questions when I would wander in Alcoholics Anonymous when I was in the military, and I would answer them. It would say, have you ever lost a job due to your drinking? And I would say no. Like, I don't know what I thought the United States Navy was. Like, it's not just a job, it's an adventure. But everything that I loved, I just threw away for another drink, and I even knew I was doing it at the time. When people talk about step 2 and they look at this idea of insanity and coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves is going to be able to restore us to sanity, we look at that word and we take offense with the fact that people think we're kind of crazy. But I think the most insane thing that I ever do, I do stark raving sober when I'm a couple days away from my last drink and I hate myself. And I make a conscious decision sober to pick up a drink because I need that sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking just a couple, that I'm able to watch you guys take with impunity. And I know you can get away with it, and I know doggone well I can't. And then I lie to myself. Bill Wilson, in As Bill Sees It, does one of these writings, and he says the deception of others is nearly always rooted in the deception of ourselves. And I need to lie to myself and buy that lie before I can ever pass it off to you. And I knew for a long time, you guys, I used to go, I haven't done any of those things that you guys do, and when I do those things, I'll come back to Alcoholics Anonymous. And during the next 15 months, I did them all, and I did them over and over and over again. I put myself in positions to be hurt, like our big book talks about, where people we step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous having every horrible thing that could possibly happen to a little homeless, drunken woman happen to me, and it happened more than once. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I believed, victimized by the things that had happened to me. And I started doing inventories with a sponsor and talking about being gang raped by bikers. And people in Alcoholics Anonymous, well-meaning people, are telling me, honey, you got to look for your part. And I'm looking at this instance, and I'm looking for my part, and I'm trying to come up with my part in something that I had no part in. You guys, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, when we're doing our inventory, it says we resolutely look for our own mistakes. Where were we at fault? What mistakes did I make, and where was I at fault? Where did I place myself in a position to be hurt? I don't have to take responsibility for my part in something that was somebody else's responsibility. Looking for my part in something's like tearing a little corner off the piece and saying, this is my part and this is yours, but I didn't have a part in that. But I got to, after years in sobriety, look for the mistakes that I made. Where was I drunk and in places that I shouldn't be in? Where was I dressed inappropriately? Where did I talk a lot of smack trying to be like bigger than I thought I was because I was afraid? Everything I do, you guys, is to mask this self-centered fear that like lives right here that tells me that I'm not enough, that I'm not worthy, that I'm not good enough. And I ran through my life, and in the last 15 months, God, why did I talk about that? I did every single nasty, horrible thing I swore to God I would never do before I came to you guys. And on the 10th day of October in 1984, I weighed 120 sucked up pounds, and I'm 5'10", so I was a little underweight. I was diagnosed when I was 8 years sober with chronic liver disease, So at the time that I got sober, I had just this little yellowish tinge to my skin, and my eyeballs weren't quite the right color. And I came to Alcoholics Anonymous sick, and I walked into this little Alano club in Hawthorne. It was called the Southwest Alano Club. And I was underweight. I had just enough bile in my hair to pass as highlights. And I had this shirt with that acrid kind of homeless stench that takes a good month to wash out of your pores, and a pair of pants that were too tight with a big hole right in the back end. So I walked in that Alano club, and all the men in the room went like this. Which was perfect, because it stopped you from looking in my face, because you guys would look at me, and my immediate reaction, you guys, was to look down. And I stayed sober at that little Alano club for a while, and I knew every cigarette burn in those long tables, and I knew what color the tiles were. I could almost count the specks in each one of them. I knew what kind of shoes you guys wore, because you looked at me, and I looked down. I felt so unworthy, you guys, when I came to you. I was just so broken. And the day of my last drink was actually on the 9th day of October. On the 10th day of October in 1984, I woke up in this little townhouse that I was living in. It was actually like really a roundabout townhouse, because when it ran, it would get me roundabout town. It was a 1971 MG Midget. And I had a trunk in the trunk with all my dirty, nasty possessions in it. And I woke up, and I had just gone to the Boys Market grocery store and stolen a big 1.75-liter bottle of vodka, and it was sitting in the den, and I hadn't even opened the vodka yet, but I got that effect. You guys, my shoulders dropped, and like that crick in my neck went away. And I knew like I was going to be okay in a minute. I guess most normal folks have to like drink the alcohol before they go, but I just had it sitting there, and I was like, shoo, everything's going to be okay in a minute. And just like he was sitting there in the seat next to me, I heard that counselor say, kid, if you ever want to get sober, call Alcoholics Anonymous, but you won't, you'll die drunk. And for some reason, I got out of the car, I put a dime in the payphone, and I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and this little guy named Sam answered the phone. And he covered up the mouthpiece of the phone, and he told Eunice, who was our central office manager, we got a live one here, let's send her to Birch. And they sent me all the way across town to the Southwest Alano Club, and I walked into this room. It was a Wednesday 5:30 meeting on relationships. And I walked in this room, there were about 80 people sitting there that had all just gotten off work from places like Northrop and TRW. They all had suits on, and their hair was nice, and they had makeup on. They all worked in the aerospace industry, and they all ranged in age from about 87 to 132. And I was 20 years old, you guys. I am the president and founder of the Never Had a Legal Drink Club, and I walked into this Alano Club and thought I had died and gone to hell, and I had not another good idea left. And if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, gosh, I hope you're just out of ideas. I hope you got nothing, because I had nothing. And I lived in that little car. I walked into the Alano Club, and I sat down. I started copying the steps down on a pad of paper that I had stolen from the grocery store on the way over there, because I didn't have money to buy your big book. And this guy named Olin gave me a big book, and you guys put all your phone numbers in there. I had like 20 phone numbers of people that I wouldn't call to put me out if I were on fire. And I left that 5:30 meeting, and I went back in for the 8:30 meeting, because I didn't have any place else to go. And at the end of that 8:30 meeting, their hour and a half, it was 10 o'clock, and you guys swooped me up, and you took me to something called fellowship. And we went to Dee's coffee shop, and you bought me a $1.99 breakfast and fed me coffee until 2 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't get any more liquor. And then you guys mysteriously disappeared, and I went and rattled in my car until the next morning. I parked it behind that Alano Club, and I actually lived there for the next 30 days behind Birch. And the secretary of the 6:45 attitude adjustment meeting would come out in the morning about 6 before you guys got there, and he would have me come in, and he would let me eat all the jelly donuts I wanted and drink all the coffee that I wanted before you guys got there for your little attitude adjustment meetings before you went to work at Northrop. And so I would drink coffee and eat donuts, and he bought me a toothbrush, and he would let me clean up in the bathroom before you guys got there for work. And so you would come, and I would adjust your attitudes, and then I would send you off to work. And then you'd come back at 11:30 on your lunch break, and we'd have an 11:30 meeting and a 5:30 meeting and an 8:30 meeting, and then we'd do the D's thing again. And you guys just like, oh my God, you just carried me right along with you. And I felt unworthy, you guys. I felt smelly. You guys used to take me home and let me shower up and sleep on your couch and wash up in your showers, and you'd bring me back for the next meeting. And in between the meetings, some of those old timers would take me into the front room and start reading me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I remember my mama Helen, she had an eye patch because she had lost her eyeball, and she would read me the book, and she was reading through those 5 types of alcoholics that a couple of our speakers have made reference to in the doctor's opinion in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. And she goes, which one are you, honey? And I said, well, I'm certain that I'm the one that's normal in every regard except for the effect alcohol has on us. And she just kind of giggled and went, oh, that's good, honey. She didn't go, you crazy loon. No, you're not. She just goes, oh, honey, that's good. It means you relate. And she would just read me the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she loved me so incredibly. She used to call me her daughter because she didn't have any little girls, and she was my mama Helen. And I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous at 20 years old, and I found the people that I had been looking for my whole life, the ones that I drank looking for. I found a feeling about myself that I had drank to find for my whole life. You guys accepted me no matter how vile I was, and I could never, ever repay you for that. But I stayed sober, and I lived behind that little Alano Club, and you guys told me to get a sponsor, and you told me the men work with the men and the women work with the women, and the men are going to pat your ass and the women are going to save it. So I asked this guy named Paul Matson to sponsor me because he was this eclectic, funky, leftover hippie from the 60s, and he had long gray hair. He wore these carpet purses and these bandanas and all this turquoise jewelry. And he had these black glasses that he would push way down on his nose. And he spoke with this really Shakespearean English accent, even though he was from Inglewood, California. And he would get up to the podium and he would drape himself over there and he would say, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And he would look right at me, and I was like, ooh! So I asked this guy to sponsor me, really, you guys, because I thought I could work him, right? Because I know you women, like when we cry, you smell blood in the water, and you're like, yeah, and you're on us. And so I thought, like, if I shed a few tears, he'd get up off me or whatever. He'd, like, go a little easier on me, and I thought he was this kind, eclectic old man, and I was just so wrong. I said, will you sponsor me? And his size 11 went straight up my butt, and it didn't come out for 2 solid years. And I was obnoxious, you guys. I read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous so that I would have ammunition on you. And people used to go like, you're too young to be an alcoholic. I spilled more on my tie than you ever drank, little missy. And I would tell them, if you'd have got it in your mouth, you might have got here a little bit sooner. I was just mean, you guys. In our big book, it talks about women are often gone beyond recall in a few short years, and young people who are scarcely more than potential alcoholics. So you would say that stuff to me, and I would attack you with your own literature. And then you started letting me talk from your podium. It was just great. And but Paul did, and I would get up to meetings, and I would say, my name's Tina, and I'm an alcoholic, and he would majestically arise from his seat right in the front row, and he would say, that's all you know, sit down now. And I was like, have you ever? Like, are there any of you guys here in Florida? You would never do that to a newcomer. Like, we have sensitive feelings, you guys, and when you're mean to us, like, we leave. I gotta go. And I would go, and I'd go in a huff out the door, and my friend Gary would just follow me out, and he'd go, nice day, look at the moon. And he'd just turn me around and walk me right back into the room, and I'd be like, doo-doo-doo, and sit back down. And I had 30 days. I got up to the podium, and I was going to tell you guys some stuff because I've been to the psych unit. I've been to rehab. I know all of the new cutting-edge stuff about the disease of alcoholism. And you guys are old, and you have been here since the crust of the earth cooled. So certainly, I've got pertinent information that y'all need. And so I was going to tell it to you, and I started talking, and he started doing that sponsor squiggle, which is why I talk so fast, because you never know when they're going to get up and make you shut up. And up he got again, like, you're finished now. And all the old-timers were like, and I wasn't done, you guys. I was not done. But I tucked my tail between my legs, and I went and sat back down. He was just the meanest old man. One time I was talking, he got up, he goes, baby girl, if we want your opinion, you must wait until I give it to you first. And you guys were like, I hated you, and you guys needed a service person. So when I had a couple weeks sober, you needed an ashtray putter-outer person, because we smoked in the meetings, and Paul grabbed my sleeve and pulled it up into the air like a little marionette puppet, and I was your new ashtray putter-outer person. And I would show up 45 minutes early and space 2 ashtrays equally from the ends of the table so that your osteoarthritic little arms could all hit the ashtrays with your cigarettes. And I was the best ashtray putter-outer person in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't know it at the time, but I loved feeling a part of. I loved coming in and you guys knew my name. I loved feeling like I was participating and doing something of value in the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then you made me your coffee cup washer. And I would go in the back and I would wash your coffee cups and I would wash the ashtrays. And when you were particularly cantankerous to me, I would wash the ashtrays first. And then I would wash your ceramic cups in the dirty water when I was finished. And I only did that twice because I had to make amends from the podium, and public humiliation's never been my strong suit. So then you guys made me your coffee maker, and I used to make you this rank Navy coffee. I would serve toothpicks with it so you could get the grinds out of your teeth. And I thought you would fire me and make me your treasurer, perhaps. And so I would serve you this coffee, and you would chew it, and you would come up with your little black teeth and go, "Good Navy coffee, baby girl." And I was your coffee maker, and then I made me your treasurer for a little while, and I stole your money, and then I had to give it back. And then you guys, you did the most amazing thing. You made me the secretary of the 2040 plus group, the big meeting at my club in Hawthorne, like the secretary. And one of my heroes, like that used to float into the meetings, was the outgoing secretary. And all of these amazing people were nominated, and you voted, and like, you picked me. Like, it never ceases to amaze me, you guys, that I get to stay in here with you guys and that you trust me and you let me serve you. I am so thankful for that. And they made me the secretary of that meeting, and I was in like hog heaven. I fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous when I had about 6 weeks sober. We have at Birch the annual Old Timers meeting is the Friday after Thanksgiving. They've been having it forever, ever since Birch was founded in like the 1950 whatever it was. And so we would have these Old Timers meetings, and everybody that participated had 20 years or more. And they would arrange all the old timers up on the stage in their varying stages of decay. So my mama Helen had the patch on her eye, and my sponsor Paul sat up there with oxygen and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and my friend Bob had a prosthetic limb, and all of them were on oxygen, for crying out loud. And you guys did that tagline. You said, makes me throw up a little bit, "If you want what we have." And I thought, like, oxygen walkers and canes. Oh my, I don't want anything you guys have, and my God, don't even hug me, because I'm afraid whatever you have is going to, like, fall right off of you, for crying out loud. Like, just stay over there. And I showed up. I love the Al-Anon women in my meetings, because they gave me all of the Alateen clothing that was too offensive for their little daughters to wear. So I think you all were having slips long before, you just didn't admit it. But you would give me all of your teenagers' clothing, and I would come bebopping into Birch in these little mini skirts way up here and these really low-cut shirts with these fishnets and hooker heels, and I had that 1980s flash dance hair going on. I was just something. And I would come bebopping into the meeting and run all over the place, and I'd get up and get coffee and go sit down and go get Paul coffee and go pee and go outside and smoke, and you guys would be reading the 12 traditions, and I'd get up and go over there and start talking to somebody. And Paul put his hand on my leg one time. He shoved me back down in the chair. He goes, "If you get out of that chair one more time during the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, you better have piss dribbling down your leg." And you guys were like, "Woo!" And I learned how to sit down in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and stop getting up and disrupting people and talking, because certainly what I thought I had to say was way more important than whatever you might have needed to hear. Paul told me one time, just because you're not interested in listening, have you ever stopped to think that maybe that newcomer behind you needs to hear what's going on at the podium? Shut up. Shut up. And then he would call me baby girl to soften the blow. And everybody called me that, because I was like their little mascot. And I went to that old timers meeting. I had 6 weeks sober. I was dressed like icky, like I just told you. And I sat in the very front row, and you guys did that tagline, if you want what we have. And all of a sudden, about halfway through the meeting, I realized like I wanted absolutely everything that you had. And it took me by surprise. Had I known that was going to happen, I would have left long before that meeting, because I did not come in here to stay sober for the rest of my life, 24 hours at a time. It was not what I came here for. I was going to fix what I broke and leave. And I just happened to get a sponsor who tricked me into taking some actions and going to meetings on a regular basis and working for him and doing these things that had me stay. This old timer one time, Tom Woods, he said, "You never have to pick up another drink for the rest of your life, 24 hours at a time." And I looked at him and thought, well, you only have 3 days left. It's going to be a piece of cake for you to never pick up another drink for the rest of your life, 24 hours at a time. I am 20 years old. I have a long way to go to never pick up another drink. But I just stayed, and I sat in that meeting, and I realized, like, I wanted what you had. And it wasn't Chuck Lyle's Cadillac that was parked outside, and I didn't want Frank and Francie Priest's relationship or Mike and Norma Enson's house over in Torrance. I didn't want Kathy's job at Northrop. I didn't want any of those outside things. What I wanted was that sparkle that you guys had in your eyes. It was like you had diamonds in your eyes, and every time you guys looked at me, your whole face would light up. And I wanted that ease that you guys were able to breathe with. I had been holding my breath for my entire life, and I wanted that belly laugh that you guys had that started right here and like rolled all the way up out of you. When I got sober, I used to laugh in French. You guys would spill your coffee, and I'd go, and that's like the only way that I knew how to laugh. It was sarcastic and mean, and something wrong would happen to you, and I would think it was funny, even though I didn't think it was funny. And I would drop the F-bomb from the podium, and I would dress inappropriately, and I would get up. I was just horrible. And the things that I learned from that old man when I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I had no idea that what he was teaching me was how to be a respectable member in Alcoholics Anonymous, and really, I didn't even want to learn that lesson. I just did those things because that's what he expected of me. And I wasn't allowed to tell him no. I wasn't allowed to ask him how come I had to do that stupid thing. I would go, this is what's going on in my life. And he would go, great, go wash the coffee cups. And I'd go, old man, did you not hear me? And I would go wash the coffee cups. And I came in one time and I was having relationship problems with my boyfriend that I got when I was 31 days sober. And, and he goes, go change your clothes. And I go, what? Like, I'm cute. What do you mean go change my clothes? And he goes, would you wear that to church? And I said, well, no, sir, but there's a dance after the meeting. And he goes, go change your clothes. If you wouldn't wear it to church, I'll be damned if you'll wear it to mine. And I went and changed my clothes. I was angry, you guys. And I came back a couple weeks later, and you know what happened? I realized I walked right into the meeting, and I started shaking your hands, and I started hugging you guys, and I started looking right in your eyes, and I was able to meet your gaze without looking down. I had no idea that the actions that man was teaching me were going to teach me a little bit of dignity and a little bit of self-respect, a little bit of a way to carry myself like a lady in Alcoholics Anonymous and to get over the things that I had done in the past. I worked the steps with that man, and my life like exploded right in the middle of you guys. Like, it became more than I ever dreamed possible for myself. And I got married, and I had these 2 kids. Well, let me tell the truth. I had this baby out of wedlock, and then I met another man, and I married him because I was looking for a father for my child. And then we had another baby, and we built this life beyond compare in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was married for 17 and a half years, and I had these 2 boys that I loved more than life itself. And it was so funny, like Diane was talking yesterday about sheltering her children from Mike, and as you were talking, I went, oh my God, like, I denied my ex-husband a relationship with his kids because I was so busy being super mom that I had to get in the middle. And I never ever would have contemplated that. Like, I made amends to that man for a lot of things, and in a general way but I got it in a way that I never have before. So thank you so much for your talk yesterday. But we built this amazing life in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I moved up to Northern California, and my kids were superstars, you guys. I did my amends to the United States Navy by giving him my eldest born. I signed Matt's delayed entry papers when he was 17 years old, and I gave him to my Navy. And he was a master at arms, and he went over to Iraq, and he was in a war zone working at the prison in southern Iraq, and I was filled with that fear that only a service member's family knows when your baby or your brother or your husband or whoever is in a war zone. And I couldn't get a hold of my son, and I was so scared, you guys, and I just kept praying, and I just kept praying. And my husband likes motorcycles, and he started riding with these unsavory characters, to say the least. And when I was 17 and a half years sober, he rode off into the sunset with the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. Like, who could make this up? He was like almost 20 years sober. And I thought at the time all the greasy bikers he was running off with were men, but I was mistaken only on one count. And so he rode off with those bikers and the bartender from Payne's, and he left. But during this period before he left, he wasn't coming home at night, and he was doing these things that are incongruent, you guys, with the sober spiritual lifestyle in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous. And we would fight, and we didn't fight at all, but he would come home, and I would be like, Greg, like, you cannot serve two masters. What are you doing? And he would just kept doing it. I had no idea that the harder I tried to hang on, the harder I was pushing him away. And the more I tried to control his actions and make him do the things I wanted him to do, the more he was going to rebel, even though that's what I would have done. But he left, and my youngest son, who was like the point guard, the starting quarterback, the varsity wrestler, the honor roll kid, like that guy I hated in school, he started quitting all the sports teams and failing out of school. And I got two parts of my story coming to life right before my very eyes. I got a drunken Navy sailor son and a dope fiend high school dropout kid. And I couldn't fix any of it, you guys, no matter how hard I tried. And my entire life right in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous crumbled. And I was filled with this resentment that I had never experienced before. And it was a resentment against a loving father that you guys gave me in Alcoholics Anonymous. I told you a little bit yesterday about coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, not want to believe in a power greater than myself. In our big book in chapter 4 in We Agnostics, it talks about those of us with agnostic temperament, or those of us who are agnostically inclined. It talks about failed self-sufficiency and fancied self-reliance, or maybe I got those backwards, but I ran my entire life in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous by those two principles, given the stuff that I thought I couldn't handle to God and hanging on to the rest of it. And for a long, long time in AA, I did just fine. And I used this. God made me a strong, independent woman for a reason. It's a gift He gave me. Why wouldn't I utilize it? And I ran my life and everybody around me. And I did okay for a long time, but at 21 and a half years sober, everything was gone. And I was like the Clancine of the Central Valley up in Northern California, and I had like 150 babies that would all come to my house. We'd read the big book and work the steps, they used to call me Tina and the Bleeding Deaconettes, because you guys would break a tradition. I would look at one of my girls and go, and they'd go take care of it for me, and I would sit back in my smugness going, ha ha ha. I ran my group with a firm yet loving hand, and I love candlelight meetings, because when you guys turned the lights off, I would glow in the dark. It was just bitching, you guys. But I loved my life that I had built in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I served you, and all the things that I learned when I was new were all applicable in my life and working great, and all of a sudden everything fell apart. And I'm running out of time, so there was a 2-year period that I got into this nightmarish relationship, rebounding right out of my marriage with somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous who seemed like a grand old-timer, but didn't end up turning out to be that. And a few of you probably know who he is, so I'm not going to mention any names. But I spent 2 years where my world got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. I woke up at 25 years sober the day of my 25th birthday. I was in Pueblo, Colorado at a conference, and I realized that I didn't have one person that I was allowed to call to thank for my 25 years of sobriety, and my world was tiny, And I didn't get sober, you guys, to do hard time in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I ended that relationship, and I called Clancy, and I got him to sponsor me. And I started taking actions that brought me right back into the center of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he absolutely saved my life by the actions that he demands that I take. And I love that man. I have such a great life in here with you guys. I was living in Northern California, and I was laying on the floor one day, and I was consumed with this self-pity that was just like drowning me. And I was going to go to this meeting, and I wasn't going to go to this meeting, and I ended up calling Clancy and asking if I could talk to him, and I went down to his office. He lived 350 miles from me. I drove all the way down to Southern California, and I asked him for help. And if you're new or relatively new, or gosh, even if you're old and you forgot, the most powerful words we could ever utter out of our mouth is, will you help me? Because when I'm asking for help, it means that I'm at the end of my human resources, and Clancy was somebody that I was willing to listen to and follow direction from. And I used to drive 350 miles on Wednesday to go down to my home group and have lunch with my sponsor. And on Friday or Saturday, I would drive all the way back up to Northern California, drive all the way back down the next week. And that's certainly not like willing to go to any lengths. It's 30 minutes past there, if you ask me. But I did that for a year, and I moved back down to Southern California. Both of my kids were home at the time, and they were having these frat house parties in my house. And my Navy sailor son, my Iraqi vet, was discharged early from the military, and he's an alcoholic. And he would throw these huge parties, and he was suffering from a little bit of post-traumatic stress and just having a hell of a time. And my youngest guy was going off the rails with coke, no pun intended. But he was doing his thing, and I was certain at one point that I was going to have to give my oldest son to Alcoholics Anonymous, and my youngest one I was going to have to turn over to Narcotics Anonymous, because I am a firm believer in our singleness of purpose, you guys. I have watched more people in 28 years in Alcoholics Anonymous go out on drugs because they're addicts, and we think it's okay to let them sit in the middle of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we tell them stupid crap like, just say you're an alcoholic and you can share from our podium. When you read our literature, our big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, just substitute the word drugs for alcohol and you'll be fine. They have their own book, they have their own program, and they have their own people that they can sit down with eyeball to eyeball and relate to, so that they know that they're where they belong and they can get the help that they need. The people that I loved more than anything that I have buried in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, 90% of were drug addicts that should have been in another program, and I didn't have the nuts to tell them, because I wanted to please them. I wanted them to like me. I thought, like, the realm of the spirit is all inclusive. Well, so is theirs. And if we don't send people to the program that they belong to, they don't ever identify with us, and they feel like they're standing on the outside of something looking in, just like I did my entire life. But I left my kids in Northern California. That was a tangent, wasn't it? I left my kids in Northern California, and I moved back down to Southern California because I couldn't let them party in my house anymore. And I felt like I went home, you guys, and I'm back where I got sober. I'm in the middle of my home group. I'm next to my sponsor, and I feel like a kid in a candy store. And my oldest son went to school in Santa Barbara on his GI Bill. He's a semester away from graduating from college, and I'm so proud of him. He's still having a heck of a time. But my stepfather just passed away from lung cancer in February, and my little guy transferred to the college right next to my mom, and he moved in, and he took care of my stepdad, and he changed his colostomy bag, and he got up in the middle of the night, and he cared for my father. And you guys taught that little boy how to do that. It was nothing that I did. My kids were raised right in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it absolutely takes a village to raise my idiots. But you guys have done such a fine job with my kids, and my youngest guy was going crazy. He was couch surfing, he was doing coke, and he had run out of places to land. And he called me one day and he said, "Mom, can I come home?" And I go, "Of course, you just can't get loaded in my house." And I bought him a bus ticket, and he came home and landed on my couch. He stayed there for 6 months, and then he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. And the day that he got there, I took him up to Mountain High to a Pacific group conference, and the men in my group surrounded my little boy, and they taught him that he could have fun without doing doing drugs and drinking alcohol, and we played games and we went to meetings, and Polly P was speaking there on Sunday morning, and she's known Dylan since he was this big, and she was just so proud of him, and he got to hang out with me and Polly, and he stayed with me for a year before he left for boot camp, and he went to the yard every Saturday to Clancy's house, and you guys worked a miracle in my son's life. Frank Jones became his mentor, and he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. He's 0311 Marine Corps rifleman. And he went through infantry training in Camp Pendleton, and they picked him out of his class and sent him to Washington, D.C., to the Marine barracks at 8th and I. And he went through a whole heck of a lot of training, and he was 2 of about 87. I say 90 because I always round up, but there were 87 guys that they picked and sent over there, and 2 of them were part of the Marching 24. He's part of the Marine Corps Silent Drill Platoon. And you guys, I know more than anything in my life that everything good and right and proper that I have is a direct result of me being in here with you guys and a loving God that you guys have introduced me to. And I also know that everything that's good and right and proper in the lives of my sons and everybody that I love is a direct result of my involvement in Alcoholics Anonymous and theirs too. And I pray one day when my big guy needs you, that he's going to be able to come in here, and the message that he hears when he comes into Alcoholics Anonymous is going to be the same one that I heard on the 10th day of October in 1984. I pray to God that we don't water down this message, that we don't change it, that we don't bring too much treatment lingo and psychoanalysis in here, that the message of Alcoholics Anonymous goes away and we carry something that doesn't save people's lives because we're uniquely qualified. I've got one story and then I'm going to shut up. When I was 15 years sober, I went on this cruise and I was still fighting the idea of God. I do that all the time, because once I acknowledge the fact that there's a loving Father and that I have to turn my will and my life over to the care of Him, then I got to do that. It's incumbent upon me to follow through once I make that decision, and so most of the time I don't want to. And so I was 15 years sober. I was fighting the idea of God. I had an amazing life in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was on this cruise ship going to Ensenada, Mexico. Saturday night, it was the captain's dinner, and I was dressed in this lacy gown, and I had all this makeup on, and my hair was perfect. I was married to who I thought was the man of my dreams that I was going to grow old with, and I had 2 amazing kids at home and a house that I owned in Norco, California with horses in my backyard, and I sponsored Half the Planet, and I was absolutely, you guys, in love with my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was standing on the deck of this cruise ship, and I was talking to all my old-timers who had passed away long ago. And I was standing there, and I was telling them, like, oh, my God, you guys, whoever would have thought? Like, look at me. Whoever would have thought that I would stay sober for 15 years and have this amazing life? And just like every single one of them was standing right there next to me, I could hear them all say, we did, baby girl. And I know that my mama Helen looked at me when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous, and she saw a loving mother. And I know Paul Matson looked at me, and he saw a sober, dignified woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. Frank Priest looked at me, and he saw a wife, and you guys looked at me and you saw all of these amazing possibilities that I could not possibly see for myself, and it's almost as though you breathed them into my very being. You guys, I think you guys created me from nothing. Everything that I am is because you saw a possibility in me and molded me into it. And if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, I want you to know this. We see possibilities in you that you cannot possibly see for yourself. You can have anything that you want to have. You can do anything you want to do, and you can be anything that you want to be if you just stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. You get a sponsor, you follow some directions. Just put your feet where we put our feet, and anything is possible. You guys, I love my life. I feel like a kid in a candy store, and like I said when I started, if I lived to be 100 and serve you guys every single day, I could never possibly repay you for the gifts that you've given me, and I love you so much. Thanks for having me.